Hi, my name is Keegan. I'm the founder of Joiner Services, and this is Engineers in Automation. On today's episode, we're going to talk with Demarcus Sears, the tech manager for SS Automation and Controls. His company specializes in robotics, engineering, programming, as well as PLC and controls engineering. Now let's go talk automation. And welcome back. I am here with Demarcus Sears, the technical manager of SS Automation and Controls. Welcome, Demarcus. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. Could you just give us a little bit of introduction about yourself and who you are and who you work with and your company?
I am Demarcus Sears. I am the technical manager and robotics applications engineer at SS Automation and Controls, based out of Goodlettsville, Tennessee, maybe 15 minutes north of Nashville. Um, our company provides a lot of PLC and robotic support to a lot of OEMs, a lot of integrators, and we do some custom one-off applications, more specific to the automotive sector, but we're branching out and we're trying to get into these areas that are looking to integrate robotics and automation to drive their throughput.
Yeah, great to hear. How many employees do you have at your company currently?
Currently, we have 3 employees. We have a fourth one that's going to come on next month, and we're looking to expand. If you know anybody who's looking to join a growing team and expand upon what they currently know, please give us a shout out here, and we'll be here waiting for highly qualified applicants.
Awesome, awesome. Congratulations on that. And how did
Thank
you
you.
get your start in the automation industry?
So my start in the automation industry is what I like to consider a little unique. I started out with a love for electronics. It all started when I was maybe 11 to 12 years old, and I stuck a butter knife into an electrical outlet, and I was like, man, that hurt, but it felt good. So I started reading books on what exactly electronics is. I'm one of the first people to do a mechatronics apprenticeship out of a major manufacturer, which was Mercedes Benz in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Roll Tide. And it's one of those things that once I got into the classes, I started doing the PLCs, the robotics, the electronics. That is just something that I felt like was a missing portion of what I had going on. I feel like that gave my life purpose because it was something that I love. But growing up in the area that I grew up in, it was something that was not really big, like in your places like Michigan, where everybody's one of those, where everybody's in the automation industry. It
Yeah.
was very, very, very unlikely in that area for somebody to go into the automation industry.
Awesome. Well, good for you. And then how did you get started in your company and with your business?
So what happened was I was at a previous employer, and there were a couple of contractors around, and I was looking for a move, and they told me, they were like, "Hey, man, no offense, we don't feel like this company is going to be a great fit for you, but what we would suggest you to do is for you to start your own company because what you're worth is something that's not going to be able to be paid by a company." And within the next few months, I did a lot of research. I was like, okay, I think this is something that we need to do. So I got with a couple of people who were running, who wanted to do a startup, and I was like, okay, let's do this. So
Awesome.
that's how
Good
I got
good for
into it.
you. Good for you. And that taking that leap into, venturing off into self-employment and starting your own business, that's definitely a risky move, and it seems like it's paying off for you. So
Oh,
congratulations on that.
yeah, thank you. It's definitely something risky. It's even more risky when you have employees and you're trying to make sure that people are fed, because at the end
Yep.
of the day, one of the unsung songs of being a business owner is the people that you have to take care of. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, that means you're not taking care of your people. And the people that come along in your business are what is going to help you propel yourself to be a better person. And they're also going to push you to be a better person. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things, but it's also scary if you're not prepared for it. And one of the favorite quotes I think is by Mike Tyson is that, if I mean, everybody knows how to fight, until they get punched in the face. And
Yeah.
opening a business and starting a business and running a business is like getting punched in the face for the very first time. It's all about
Yeah,
how you react to it.
great analogy. And so now, are your employees that you're bringing on, are they self-employed 1099 or are they W-2 employees for you?
So this is going to be a W-2 employee. We do work with some 1099s, but as of right now, we're trying to expand, our brand, get our name out there, and we want to hire some W-2 people. But we are open to some 1099 people. 1099 people have helped us get to the point where we are. So thanks to the 1099 people.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody who's self-employed. So what are some of the things that you've found now that you've been in the industry that you really like about automation?
One thing that I absolutely positively love about automation is that it's a forever changing industry. Some weeks are the same, and then other weeks are completely different than something that you've never experienced before. I consider myself a long, short-term person. I love to be in startups, get everything started, in different facilities, and then move on to the next project. But in those instances where work is going a little stagnant or, different things like that, you get a little bored, and then that's where you get to the point where you want to start looking for new things.
Yeah, and the automation industry definitely has that ability to bring change, and as you probably see too, every new customer has new challenges and
Yeah,
new technologies and difference is in each project, so it's always unique and different.
yeah, it's very different, especially depending on the facilities that you're at. Because in the 8 years that I've been in the automation, well, probably 9 now, the 8 to 9 years that I've been in the automation industry, man, I've done a plethora of jobs. I've done everything from be a robot programmer to a maintenance technician to an automation technician to a PLC guy, all the way up to what I am now, which I love, which is a robotics engineering person. And then, like I said, it's one of the industries where there aren't a lot of people who can sit in a specific role for a certain amount of time, especially if you're going to be traveling.
Yeah. Yeah, well, good for you for being able to be so agile and
Thanks, man. Thanks.
venturing off and trying new things. And with that, though, let's go to the reverse side. What about the automation industry maybe you don't like as much? Is there something there?
The long hours.
Yeah,
Long hours.
yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest things. The long
Pros and
hours.
cons of doing the startup part, right? I mean,
Yeah,
especially,
and
a customer may want 12, 14-hour days out of you, right?
yeah, and 12 to 14 hours is not something that people who aren't in this industry don't understand to be like a normal thing. There have been plenty of times where I've come home, I've sat down, got my dinner, and I take one cut into my steak, and then I get a phone call, and I got to head right back to the facility.
Yeah.
People don't understand that. That's part of wanting to be better and doing whatever it takes to make sure your company has a good reputation, but also making sure that you have a good reputation, because without your personal reputation, there is no company reputation.
Yeah, great point. Great point with that. And then I guess to kind of touch on that a little bit, what are some of the mistakes, I guess, that you maybe have made in the past?
Running a business or in the automation industry?
Just in automation, then we'll go back and touch on the business portion of it.
So in automation, man, I'll tell you, probably one of my most embarrassing moments is, being one of those young guys who's all gung ho and not really discovering what an issue was before I went in and tried to fix it and start. I didn't go through the proper channels of troubleshooting because I was tired and I wanted to, go home, and it's near the end of a 13-hour shift. I started fiddling around on the pendant, and I opened a gripper, and I dropped it was, I think the vehicle resale value was probably something around $50,000. And I dropped the whole subframe of the body because it was being picked up by one of the Titans.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not nice. So, and then I'm in there cutting it up, bringing it out piece by piece. So yeah, mistakes are going to be made. It's just
Yep.
what you do when the mistakes are made.
And how do you learn from that mistake, right? Because I
Yeah, that's
guarantee
one of
you
the
ain't going
big
to do
things.
that again.
Oh no, I haven't done it since. And that was very early on. That was maybe my second or third year. Why? It's been 6 or 7 years since I've done that, and I don't plan on doing it ever again.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And then what about on the business side? Let's touch base a little bit on the business side.
One thing on the business side that I've made a mistake in is when it comes to hiring someone, when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to grow as fast as possible, sometimes, growing fast is not the best way to do things. And it's one thing that I tried to do when we first started was like, hey, we're going to need somebody who's going to get here fast. We're going to need somebody who's going to be able to do this, 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 and this. And you start reading through the resume and you're like, man, this looks great. And, you have a job lined up and you're like, you know what? I'm going to hire this guy. But, you didn't properly vet this guy. You didn't ask for any references. You didn't ask for anybody who's ever worked for the guy. And then you end up in a situation like I had where he essentially lied on his resume. And then I sent him to a site and they're like, hey, man, this guy is not what you said him to be. That's embarrassing. So
Yeah.
I called him and I talked to him and I was like, hey, so I started questioning him. And then I looked back over at myself and I was like, something, I'm like, how did I miss this? How did I miss this? And I think that's probably one of the kick yourself in the butt moments where I'm like, okay, I should be slow to hire and quick to fire, because it's one of those things where I respect honesty. And if you weren't able to be honest with me about what's on your resume, then I don't think that this is the right facility for you. Well, this is the right company for you.
Good for you. Good for you. And then what are some current projects that you may be working on right now in the automation industry that you can at
So,
least talk about?
so right now I'm on a long-term robot support contract here in Tennessee. We also have some individuals who are gearing up to go to GM, and currently we're also working on an integration project for one of the largest, I guess you'll call them steel rack manufacturers in the U.S. And hopefully we'll be in there soon, putting in some welding cells, running trials, testing some things out in their facility to up their throughput,
Good for you. And then
decrease
you
their
have
cycle
you.
time.
I think we discussed previously, maybe not in this interview, but you do have a welding background as well, right?
Yes, yes. It was another one of those unconventional welding backgrounds. I grew up welding as a kid, working on the farm with my grandpa. And when I started working for another German manufacturer, first engineering gig, they were like, "Hey, man, you want to learn how to weld?" I was like, "I mean, I know how to weld." And they were like, "No. Do you want to become a welding engineer?" And they sent me off to Germany, and they were like, "Okay, this is how we do this." And it just completely blew my mind. And
Wow.
man, yeah, so it was unconventional, but I picked it up really fast. And I feel like if anybody needs some help, we're definitely here to help.
Great. And then what kind of help, from the welding standpoint, are you looking at? MIG welding, spot
Oh,
welding?
uh, so being the sole welding engineer on site, we had multiple technologies. We had stud welding, we had spot welding, we had MIG welding, and we also had nut welding. So I am me personally, I am more profound in MIG welding because it's something that I grew up on. But I also can do spot welding because it's just a numbers game to me. It's not a lot of
Right.
it's not harder than people make it seem. To me, it's just um, resistance, and then there's a formula,
Yeah.
and you watching curves drop.
Yeah. Right. And then, so I guess another good question you kind of touched on a little bit, but learning and, where do you go to learn then?
Man, I so I have this internal battle with myself where it's if there's something new, I'm going to learn it faster than anybody else can learn it. When I first started learning about welding from on a technical standpoint and the theory behind it, I was in welding. I was in welding magazines, joined the AWS. I was looking it up on YouTube. I was learning formulas, and then I'm calling people, I'm asking people, hey, how do you do this? But one of the big things that people fail to realize is that they're the manufacturers are some of the best people when it comes to wanting to learn something. Their service technicians and their service team and their engineering team, those people are some of the best people to work around when it comes to it, because they've been doing it so long, and you just want a brief snapshot of what they have. And let me tell you, it completely sped up my whole learning process, like a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point. We had Travis Weber on from Lincoln a few weeks ago, and he's one of those that does that where he'll go on site and teach classes and show people how to use welding equipment. And yeah, just another great resource. Is a
Yeah.
lot of times people don't think about. That's a great point. And then you briefly touched on earlier. I know you're a family man, so how do you separate that work-life balance throughout the week for you? What does that in automation relate to you?
So I separating it's a crazy question because I used to live maybe 5 minutes from the last facility that I was at, and I get upset because you get upset in this industry. You get a little bit upset. You have a bad day. Some of the project leaders are upset because something is ahead of time, but according to them, it's behind time. It's that
Yep.
type of thing. And what I used to do is I used to go home and I used to be upset because I didn't have time to decompress on my ride from the
Yep.
facility. And then my wife would be like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I honestly don't know. So what happened was I used to go to the grocery store every day. We always had something to
Oh
cook because I
wow.
had to go to the grocery store every day to decompress. And once I had my son, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to live a lot further away from the facility that I'm going to be working at. And so that 30-minute ride from the facility to pick my son up from daycare is one of the really, really big things that helps me decompress. And another thing is scheduling time for your family. That is a huge responsibility. I used to travel. Traveling was hard when me and my wife were dating. And what I had to realize is that, hey, she's been waiting for me all this time. The least I could do is give her a little bit of attention. So me
Yep.
and my wife, we schedule, duate nights, and during the week, I try to get my son when he gets out of school, and have him for the day. Because my wife, she does work from home, but at the same time, she needs her own personal time. And
Yep.
then we separate it, family time, parent time, and then individual time. And I think that has worked the best for us.
Yeah, good, man. That sounds so familiar, what you just touched on. I think there's going to be a lot of people that relate to what you just said because everything you just said there, I just go, yep, I did that. Yep, I did that. Yep, I do that. And it does help and make a big difference. I guess one of the final questions I want to ask you is, what are some of your words of inspiration for, somebody trying to get in the automation industry that maybe not have the conventional pathway, kind of like you said, you kind of jumped around for a minute and then you found your way in and then you kind of jumped in because somebody said, hey, maybe you should start your own thing instead of coming with us. You got to have some words of advice for, people jumping in the industry.
So I got a couple of things. One of the key quotes that I think formed the position that I'm in now is I was working a late night, and it was this guy named Mr. John. Mr. John came up to me. He said, "You know what, son? You're going to be somebody one day." He said, "I'm going to leave you with this." He said, "You drank Dos Equis?" He's like, "Nah, you're like 19. You can't drink Dos Equis." So, but I have a quote for you. And I was like, "Well, what's your quote?" He said, "Stay thirsty, my friend." He said, "Stay thirsty, my friend."
I like
He
it.
said, "If you learn something every day, nobody's going to be able to be better than you." He said, the moment you stop learning is the moment you stop getting better. So always learn something new. Prepare to be better than you were the day before. It may not be you learn a new technology in a matter of like a day or two, but if you know more than you knew yesterday, then you're already doing better.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. And then, one of the last things I always like to ask people is where can they find you? Where, website or through LinkedIn, where can people find you?
On LinkedIn, you can find me at Demarcus Sears. Not that hard to find. Big smiling cheese photo that I have on there. So, so you
Yeah.
can find me on LinkedIn. Our company website is ssautomationllc.com. That's ssautomationllc.com. If anybody has any questions and they're inquiring on anything, please do not hesitate to send an email to our support team at support@ssautomationllc.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for that interview today. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like, comment, share, or subscribe. And we look forward to having you join us next time on Engineers in Automation. Thanks.